through storms, unshaken, unbowed. Through trials and verdicts, still standing proud. A titan in the tempest, against the raging crowd. He's got a vision for the future, gonna shout it loud. Changing the wind, it's coming fast. A new foundation built to last. Cryptocurrency's the key, make the big switch. Power to the people, time to teach the rich. Legal battles can't hold him, he's moving on. With plans so bold, from dusk till dawn. He's rewriting the rules, a new dawn's day. From the hands of the few to the people's way. Say goodbye to all chains, embrace the new. A financial revolution, fair and true. For the workers, the dreamers, side by side. In Trump's new era, let freedom rise. Changing the wind, it's coming fast. A new foundation built to last. Cryptocurrency's the key, make the big switch. Power to the people, time to ditch the rich. He's a fighter, a leader with a plan to share. A world of justice, well spread fair. Forget the old guards, the time is done. Under the banner of Trump, we all have won.
Welcome, everyone, to the Crazy Cryptonaut channel. I am Zester, and thank you guys so much for joining me on this fine Trump day. I hope everyone is having a great week so far. Probably processing a lot from the State of the Union and everything else going on in the world. What is everyone up to today? Good morning. Happy Trump Day, Mile High Trish. State of the Union absolutely was. And I sent, this one's too funny. I actually responded to Trish's comment and to a few other comments that occurred before the stream started today. My comments are currently being rejected by YouTube. And so the Crazy Cryptonaut is not currently allowed to chat inside of the Crazy Cryptonaut YouTube channel for some reason. I assume we are currently live on the Crazy Cryptonaut channel, but as of right now, I tried to make a comment into the YouTube chat from my side, talking about how much I enjoyed the Somali pirates part and the strong belief that whoever the cameraman was during the State of the Union, he deserves an Oscar for his performance with the timing as he cut back and forth between Trump and Ilhan Omar, between the Somali pirate comments. But needless to say, I got kicked out of my own YouTube chat for trying to say that comment in the chat. Hopefully, while saying it now live, they won't come and find me. But yes, a few oddities going on in the background, but we're good to go, I think. Good morning, Kukla. Happy Trump Day. Happy Trump Day indeed. Good morning, campfires and sunset. Oh, Kukla, thank you so much. Hit the like button, join chat and support Zester. No, thank you guys so much for all of those that do. Good morning, Larry. Good morning, Firecracker. Good morning, Christina and Deborah. Good morning, AHD. Coming in with our first question of the day. Of course, guys, I'll do a little quick one before I start answering. Please do remember that the content in this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes, not financial advice, yada, yada, yada. But what are your thoughts about Tether regarding their gold collection? This gives them credibility, in my opinion, but I'm not sure. They are acting like a bank. AHT, this is actually very interesting. And so I'm going to go ahead and pull up some screens just so that we can go ahead and we can talk about this one a little bit, because this is a very interesting one. Because Tether has been moving over to gold for the past few years, actually, in a variety of different ways. And so let me there we go. All right. Tether has been making this move for a while. And so AHD, Tether's been making this move actually in two different ways. One way is that Tether has started backing up its market capitalization with gold bullion reserves. That was already interesting. Remember, we talked about this on Monday. Major market signal occurred with the supply of Tether suddenly going down. That's something that has only occurred very, very specific times in the past. Typically, when Tether's circulating supply starts to drop, it's an indication that we are somewhere near an overall crypto bottom. We talked about on Monday. But on specifically the gold part of this 183,624,000,000, remember, for these stablecoins to exist, that much capital has to be sitting inside of a bank account, inside of a vault. It has to be third-party audited, whatever that may be, yada, yada, yada. Each one has different regulations and rules. There are obviously better ways to go about it, but it is pretty simple. Most of the stable coins keep it simple. Essentially, you see this number on the blockchain, 183,624,238,441. You see that on your screen. What is inside of that bank account is an amalgamation of different assets that add up to a value of 183 billion and the associated millions and thousands. That can be held in a variety of different ways. Typically, to this day, would be the number one way that this is held. It's held in U.S. Treasury bonds. 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, yada, yada, yada. That is what the primary portion of that $183 billion is made up of. But that used to be 99% of the entire backing. In the past, it was essentially a small amount of liquid US dollars, and everything else was treasury bonds. Over the past few years, Tether has actually been diversifying. And what they've been doing is rotating out treasury bills for bullion gold. And they're using the gold to back the US dollar stablecoin. That has been occurring. This can actually be looked up. I think that they put out a number recently. Let's see real quick. Let's see what that number is as of today. Well, ever rising would be the answer. Tether is buying up to $1 billion of gold per month and storing it in a James Bond bunker. Company's gold purchase are mostly for its own reserve, but also support its XAUT stablecoin. And that is where the conversation evolves. And so Tether is not only backing the US dollar stablecoin with gold. That is somewhere around $1 billion of gold a month being purchased. And this article is a month old, and this article is referencing purchasing patterns that have been occurring for years. And so Tether has been buying massive amounts of gold. We know that. Tether has always been saying that they're buying gold, not necessarily to back Tether, but because of XAUT. XAUT is Tether Gold. That is the gold-backed offering pegged to a single gold ounce that is offered by Tether. This is another one where when you look at the market capitalization, you start to see where the future financial system is going. We are heading to a digital asset-backed economy. That's where we're going. The numbers are pretty darn obvious. And so since August 1st of 2025, not all that long ago, the market capitalization of XAUT, which is a gold stablecoin, has risen from 827 million to it peaked somewhere around 3.5 billion, currently sitting at $2.6 billion of market capitalization in XAUT, which does hold 1 gold ounce for each digital token. 1 gold ounce sits in a bank vault. You then are issued 1 XAUT. You go out there and do whatever you so please with it. And then at any point in time, you could always come back to Tether and say, hey, I'd actually just like that 1 gold ounce. And I would be fine with handing back in my digital token. That is absolutely a massive growing trend. And Tether being the largest stablecoin on the planet, it's kind of scary. When you look at the numbers and you look at how fast these sectors are growing, the charts don't do it justice. Think about this in a different way. All right. I'm going to try to think up a very, very, quick style anecdote or example to try and simplify the general understanding. Think about this as like a matter of any typical or normal business. Just anything. Your mom and pop shop, or real estate in your neighborhood. Think about it maybe as real estate in your neighborhood. That might be the easiest way to go about this. But essentially, if you were to look at it in that fashion, that would mean that since essentially, let's go with as close of a date, since August of 2025. So we have got August, September, October, November, December, 5 months, January, February. In a matter of 7 months, and we're rounding a little bit here. In a matter of 7 months, this global market has gone from $820 million to currently sitting at $2.6 billion. That is a 3x increase in the overall market capitalization of this entity in 6 months, essentially. 3x in 6 months. And this is literal liquid gold that we're talking about here. This is actually backed entirely by gold bullion. And so this is not just a growth in a market cap that is speculative. This is actually a fully fundamentally backed increase or overall growth of 3x in a matter of 6 months. And yes, if we were to take that and throw and look at the numbers that occurred during the absolute peak, well, then, 4.5x in a matter of 6 or 7 months. On the more important questions, I suppose here, when it comes down to it, do I trust Tether? Do I think that you should trust Tether? The answer would be no. I do not think that you should trust Tether. I don't trust Tether. And the reason for that is entirely based around where these funds are held and also the creators of Tether. And so to kind of address that, one thing right off the bat, from the Epstein files, one of the major founders of Tether is Brock Pierce, who was regularly going back and forth with Jeffrey Epstein, including sending photos, videos, etc. So we can make some fairly bold assumptions there, fairly certain and clear assumptions. And so there's one very concerning facet of Tether right there that is new information. Just came out during one of the most recent Epstein file releases. That's concerning, but that in and of itself is really the tip of the iceberg when it comes to concern over Tether. Tether has always been a major concern. And the reason Tether is a major concern is because they hold these funds outside of the United States. And they happen to hold these funds in 90% US Treasury bonds. that has really been what has always made this so concerning. There's 100 and at this point with the current breakdown, somewhere around $160 billion of US Treasury bonds being held in banks outside of the United States in order to back up the stablecoin valuation of a US dollar denominated. It's always been weird. It's always been somewhat concerning. But they've got a lot of backing, they've got a lot of money, and I have bought and sold and used Tether countless times over the years. It's a very useful tool. But it is quite concerning. Ultimately, are they a bank? I mean, it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck. That's starting to sound a heck of a lot like a duck. And so I would have to say, AHD, I think that you're right. They're acting like a bank. The gold backing, I would agree, also gives me a degree of extra safety, a better feeling about holding dollars in Tether because, well, some of it's backed by gold. XAUT, the actual gold stablecoin that Tether provides. I 1,000 million % believe that that's the way to hold precious metals. I think that in the future, people are going to be holding digital representations of their precious metals because, as we've discussed, it essentially solves every problem that the precious metals market has ever had since the beginning of written history. You can go all the way back to literally some of the earliest writings, some of the stamps that they literally used back in literally some of the original societies in Babylon. Of course, there's more history we don't know about, but what we do have that is written history, some of the first ever pieces of human writing that we've managed to decipher or translate to this point have been a matter of literal bills of sale. They were printed onto, essentially they used a stamp to print it onto clay at that point in time. But some of the original documents that we can ever find of humans were literally based around the idea of trying to figure out whether his gold coin and your silver coin were fungible. And so this is a problem that has plagued mediums of currency since the beginning of all of human history. And we have the opportunity now for that to go away. And so it is. It's very exciting to see a company as powerful as Tether jumping behind the idea of a genuinely fungible gold bullion digital currency. But this is one where I just don't trust the messenger. I don't trust Tether. I don't trust Brock Pierce, who was a co-founding member of it. I am still afraid every time that I talk crap about him because these are people that are beyond powerful. And I think that their ties, their connections, where that money is being held is enough of a reason to not want to participate. And so I buy and regularly use Tether. Do I ever hold money in Tether and let it Tether sit in my exchange account? Never. Never. And I won't. But I will continue to use Tether when I need to. Ultimately, on many exchanges out there, Tether is the number one trading pair. Most cryptocurrencies are essentially pegged to the US dollar via Tether. And so that's a very interesting one. And now I've gotten off on quite the distraction very much at the beginning before even jumping into the rest of the news. But that is a lot of what is important to be talking about right now. We're having this conversation in regards to stablecoins right now because of the Clarity Act and the idea of interest payments and digital representations of real world assets. In this case, a dollar. In the sense of XAUT, 1 gold ounce. This debate is not going to stop. It's only going to evolve. We're going to be having this debate about silver. We're going to be having this debate about everything that can be tokenized. And guess what? Everything can be tokenized. And so this conversation is only going to evolve. And I think it's very important to talk about things like this because ultimately, I want to start having my gold in a digital representation. I want my silver in a digital representation. I want that because I know the fundamental value increase that occurs upon that. I know that my gold, once it is digitally represented, it is worth more than your gold. And I know that sounds like a crazy thing to say, but it's true. If I'm allowed to earn interest back in gold for holding gold in a digital form, would you not say that my gold ounce is worth more than your gold ounce sitting in a bank vault? Ultimately, your gold ounce is always going to be worth 1 gold ounce, but a digital representation of that precious metal is going to be capable of earning interest. It's going to be liquid. It's going to be something that could be utilized as collateral for mortgages. It's so much more and so much more fundamentally valuable than that 1 ounce sitting in your gun safe. And that's where mine currently sits. Mine sit in a gun safe. And yeah, it's crazy to think about. Let me get back on track and say some more good mornings, and then let's get back to the rest of the news articles for today. Good morning, Larry. Good morning, Firecracker. Thank you, Kukla, for making certain that one's in there. Ow. Lots of great moments. Why, Zester? I'm apparently making a comment about the Somali pirates. YouTube decided that wasn't allowed, even if it is the Crazy Cryptonaut talking in the Crazy Cryptonaut chat. YouTube decided even then, not allowed to make fun of Ilhan Omar, I guess. What's up, Dundas? Tout va bien. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, Donald. How can I talk to Zester outside of the chat? The email is definitely the best way. I know, guys, on that one, it is tough because it's a lot of emails and things like that. But that one is the best way of getting a message over to me outside of chat if it's got information that you shouldn't be sharing in public. Which many times in cryptocurrency with crypto problems, that is definitely the better option. And so, Donald, shoot an email over. What's up, Copper? All right. No snow up there in Chicago yet. I know Riley down in North Carolina, and then over in Pennsylvania, it's been craziness this winter. Absolute craziness. Good morning. Good morning, Deborah. How are you doing? All right. Is XAUT the same as Pax Gold? It is not, actually. And so that's a great question there. Just to clarify for everyone, let me get my screen up just so everybody can see that real quick. We've got Tether Gold over here. That is XAUT is its token. That's its ticker symbol. And then we've got Pax Gold. And so Pax Gold is actually separate. And so if we were really going to break it down right now and say, well, okay, Zester, you got to make a pick. Pax Gold is held in London banks. I'm going to go with the London banks before I'm going to trust Chinese banks that are holding the gold reserves. And so, do I think that the London banking system is necessarily a completely harmless and innocent group of people? No, not in the slightest. But Pax Gold's gold is held in England, held in London banks and in Swiss banks. Tether's is not. Tether does have gold reserves held in Swiss banks now, including U.S. Treasury bonds held in Swiss banks, but it is not anywhere close to all of their money. And so, Pax Gold, same exact idea. And so, Pax Gold currently sitting at $5,215 per token. This number is always going to be a little bit off from whatever you see as being the precious metal price. The reason for this, and this actually, I need to do a whole show on just this. And I need to harass Andy Scheckman into doing that show with me, because something that you will always notice here, and I've had a few people comment about it. They'll say, well, okay, Zach, you're showing me the value of one digital gold ounce. And then I'm going over here and I'm looking at the value of a digital gold ounce on, say, like a APMEX or any gold seller, gold and silver seller. And I would really like to point this out. This is a very, very interesting and small thing that I think people aren't noticing yet. But in the near future, it's just going to appear as being beyond obvious at some point in the near future, but not yet. And so gold currently sitting at $5,223.60 on APMEX. PAX Gold. Let's go ahead and get a refresh so we can make certain our numbers are as close as possible to accurate. $5,215, $13.32. It just decided to change after the loading. Okay. These two numbers are regularly different. Why are they different? Because this is a global market, a global 24/7 smart contract automated market. What is the actual price of gold? I will literally bet my bottom dollar that the cryptocurrency market, assuming outside of any type of extraordinary situation, like a very low liquidity marketplace or something of that nature, this is tracking the actual value of gold. Because it's a 24/7 market. It's also an international market. And so you are going to see slight differences here. APMEX sitting at 223, PAX Gold sitting at 213, $10 less. I've had some folks ask questions about that. That is just because you are looking at a far, far, far more efficient market right here on PAX Gold. And so something that has started to occur recently on account of the new tokenized precious metals is if you actually want to know where the precious metal market is going to go that day, come check out how the cryptocurrencies that are digital representations of these precious metals are doing. It's going to give you a really good idea about how the commodity market's going to do that day because it's pricing it in faster. Essentially, you're seeing things priced in quicker on the blockchain side than you're ever going to see them priced in on, say, APMEX's ticker or something like that. All right. Kathy, maybe someone knows why Uphold wants to know how we plan to use our accounts. Kathy, Uphold and all of the exchanges are always very interested in asking that question. The why they ask that question, it comes down to an odd KYC rule that occurs in finance, Kathy. And so the reason that they're asking it is because they've been told they have to ask it. It's for some reason, I guess they think it's going to help with tracking down financial crimes, but it is a requirement. And so essentially, the trick here is don't lie. The trick here is just don't lie. If you plan on primarily using it for making payments, you're going to want to say that, things of that nature. But really what it comes down to, Kathy, the real rubber meets the road. It is nothing more than the fact that it is just an odd requirement, because that same requirement is actually forced upon you if you were to go and say, open up a Robinhood account in order to invest in stocks. They're going to say the exact same thing. For some reason, they're going to ask you, why are you creating a stock portfolio? Like, I mean, I don't know, because I like to lose money. Like, it's a silly question, Kathy, but they ask it every single time. And they do utilize that information once you give it to them, Kathy. And so while I don't believe that Uphold necessarily, it wasn't Uphold's idea to ask you. They're just following the law. But after you answer that question, Uphold does use that information to decide which products or services to recommend. And so go on and set up an account and say, hey, I plan on investing $10,000 a month into this account, you'll get a private personal email from those companies when you say things like that, because now you are suddenly a very important client. So they do use that information. But Kathy, the reason they're asking it, that's thanks to the SEC. All right, all right. Oh, what's up, Fred? How are you doing, man? I hope you are having an awesome week. Good morning, S. Fal. Let me try to catch up on the good mornings. All right. Reno, I'll hold mine in my hands. I agree. It does feel a lot safer. Kathy, do you know why Uphold wants to know how we plan to use our... sorry. I had gotten to that one, Kathy. Sorry it took me a second to get over to that one. But yes, I strongly, not just believe, I know. They asked that question because they're legally required to ask that question, but also they use that information. I know this because of how many different exchange accounts I've set up, and because sometimes I decided to change my answers a little bit, and I noticed that I received a far different degree of service, depending upon what I was willing to tell them. Tell them you're going to be buying a lot of crypto each month. Yeah, you're going to get recommended to the IRS, and you're also going to get a far higher level of customer service from that centralized exchange. Good morning, music old lady. Good morning. Good morning. After we get 4 answers. And so, no, I would not, on this one, Kathy, when it comes down to it, I would not in any way recommend not telling them essentially the truth. Just understand that those answers and what they are taking away and using it for is going to change how they treat you and what they advertise to you. Ultimately, you need to tell the truth. That in and of itself, a lot of them require you to sign at the end. And so you want to make certain that you're being truthful with those comments. But remember, when it comes down to telling them the truth, it doesn't mean you need to go giving extra information. Just tell them the truth. Why are you setting up an account? Personal use. How much money you got? Who's asking? Things like that. You are completely allowed to do, and it is not going to stop you from getting an account. Not at all. And so I would make certain to keep it, I would keep it on the straight and narrow with that one, Kathy. I would give them the accurate answer. I would just go straight with personal use. How much do you plan on investing? I don't like telling them those numbers, but also those numbers are whatever you believe you might be able to invest. So honestly, you could say $1 billion a month. You didn't lie. That's what you hope to be able to invest each month. And so a lot of those questions are silly, Kathy. I wouldn't let them bog you down. Just remember, when it comes down to it, the IRS is paying attention to crypto now. Very much so paying attention. And so just don't go writing things down or saying stuff online that could ever come back to bite you in the butt. Well, for him, question, Zester, I've seen that Coinbase is asking me to confirm my tax status. Is that something I really need to do? Well, for him, another great question. And well, it is the time of the year for this one. I don't know if y'all have been the same as me, but I have gotten one buttload of 1099s sent over to me. I have gotten a buttload of different emails from different exchanges saying, hey, we made your taxes easy this year. Things like that. Now, well, for him, of course, not financial advice. Consult with an accountant. Remember that accountants also don't really understand how cryptos work and how the tax structure works either. And so we live in a little, very much a gray area right now. This is probably going to be the last tax season. This will be the last tax season where we live in a gray area on crypto. The Crypto Clarity Act brings clarity to that subject. There are other pieces of legislation that bring even more clarity to it. Ultimately, this is probably going to be the last tax season that is so weird for crypto. Well, for him, I personally run everything directly through my accountant and do not interact with the exchanges. I take their tax reports and I send them along and I handle it that way. That is in no way financial advice, not in any form or fashion. And also, that is not in any form or fashion a declaration of guilt if I just said something I wasn't supposed to personally. That is what has worked. And that is what most everyone I know in the crypto space does. They just file everything personally in the same form and fashion that they normally would. And we categorize it as unrealized capital gains. 99.9% of crypto and your interactions with crypto fit very, very comfortably into the category of unrealized capital gains, assuming you have not sold. If you have sold, they now fit into the category of realized capital gains, and the tax structure is pretty easy then. You're getting taxed. And so, yes, a very, very important question. Well, for him, we are, I think, in the last year of it being such an odd place and such an odd space to deal with. Next year, I don't think there's going to be much of a question here, but for now, Coinbase does not need to know your tax status, but you do need to get your tax information off of Coinbase. That is something you need to hand to the accountant. Right, wrong, indifferent. You need to hand that to the accountant this year. Or when you're going through and doing your own taxes, you do need to make certain, because Coinbase is legally required to inform the IRS of your account. And so if you don't tell the IRS that you have it, Coinbase is going to rat you out because they're required to rat you out. And so best thing here, you don't have to give that information directly to those exchanges, but you do need to provide that information come tax season, right, wrong, or indifferent. I would say I have never had to pay anything because I don't sell. And so, in all honesty, the tax code would have helped me massively some years throughout this journey. If it had been properly applied to cryptocurrencies, I could have taken some pretty massive cuts. But I've just always kept it in that odd space. Pay them if you sold. If you didn't sell, just report that you did make those purchases that year. I would not tell them where it is. I've seen some are actually requesting the wallets that the cryptocurrency is sitting in. Personally, I've never provided that. I've only provided the centralized exchange records because they are the record of on and off ramp, fiat to crypto, crypto to fiat. Ultimately, the taxable event in cryptocurrency should occur on a centralized exchange, at least with how things work right now. That's a very interesting question, Wolfram. A very, very interesting question. All right, Dundas, I got a text from Coinbase saying an API has been added to my account. If not by you, then call this number. I think it is a scammer. Dundas, that sounds immediately like a scammer. Coinbase is not going to send you things like that. Whenever it does occur, and this is not just for you, Dundas, this is for everybody. If you ever receive an email from any company, I mean Google, Coinbase, your mama, whoever, it does not matter. If anyone ever sends you or you receive some kind of message, email, text, voice call, whatever, absolute first thing that you go out and you do not click any link that they have sent. Do not respond to them ever. What you do is you immediately go to that service and you log in. If there is an issue on your Coinbase account, it is going to tell you when you log in. And that is the fastest way to just immediately know whether something is a scam or not. Any service, Google, any of them. Never click on the link they sent you. Go off independently, log into that account, and if something's wrong, it's going to pop everywhere up on that screen. When you log into Coinbase, if you're having an issue with your Coinbase account, Coinbase is going to scream at you about all the problems going on. You're going to know. And that's the best way to verify that it is legitimate. That's the first thing I do whenever I get stuff like that. Hey, it looks like somebody's trying to hack your Google account, or looks like somebody's trying to get into your Coinbase. Anytime I get something like that, all I do is I go and I log into that account on a separate device, typically from the one that I received the message on. And it has never been true. I've never logged in and seen that, oh my gosh, the text message was real. It's never happened. And so that would definitely be, that's always my first go-to, and it'll make you feel a lot better because you'll just immediately be able to disprove it. And then you don't have to sit around worrying. Crazy Chester, on your crypto exchanges, make sure to change your tax filing status to hypo, highest in, first out. Hey. Some of them do have some pretty good do have a lot of ways to kind of customize depending upon whether you are self-employed, depending upon your jurisdiction and things of that nature. There's a lot of companies out in the early days that started creating software and programs for crypto taxation, and it was always something that I looked at and said, that's just so boring. I don't want to own the cryptocurrency companies that do that. It's so boring. Those companies are doing pretty well right now. They're doing pretty darn well right now. All right, let's get through some of our other ones, though. I've got a really, really big one to talk about today because I know everybody out there, all of our XRP holders are going to be hearing about this one. Matter of fact, I really was planning on making the headline of today's show directly about this. But we started a little bit early and we went off and rolling. And so I went with more of a generic title. But Ripple CTO David Schwartz rejects allegations of XRP ledger manipulation. All right. Step back. Yesterday, a fairly prominent CEO in the cryptocurrency space, Justin Bonds, made a statement regarding centralized blockchains. I've talked about this one. I have told you and talked many, many times that the XRP ledger is, by my definition, centralized. And well, Justin Bonds decided to come out and make that exact same statement that I have regularly made, and people got mad at him about it. And so let's dig into this one real quick. I know everyone's going to be seeing this popping up on your feeds. I know that my X feed is flooded with this. I've received some text messages and some emails from folks in the community asking about this one. I've got a feeling XRP is going to be chatting about this for a little while. And so, what happened? All right. David Schwartz rejected Justin Bonds' accusations. Justin Bonds claimed that XRPL, that is the blockchain, the XRP ledger that is run and operated by Ripple Labs, the company, is a centralized network under corporate control. Now, that is true. It is true. And there's countless evidence to prove that it's true because the consensus verifiers, the validators of XRP, have decided in the past to not do their job. That is why XRP has had outages. And so this is getting into the kind of a sticky situation because what David Schwartz, and David Schwartz is the tech guy at XRP. He is one of the original engineers and creators of the consensus mechanism that operates the XRP ledger. He's pretty much been around forever. We talked about this one back in 2025. He has stepped down into more of a management role, less of a day-to-day operations role. but he is still viewed as the guy to ask about XRP tech questions. And so, Schwartz argued that the UNL mechanism does not grant Ripple absolute power, comparing the argument to claiming that a miner can create Bitcoin out of thin air. The executive noted that unlike Bitcoin and Ethereum, the XRP ledger has no confirmed cases of censorship or malicious transaction reordering. So, David Schwartz, CTO Emeritus of Ripple, publicly rejected the claims made by Cyber Capital founder and Chief CIO Justin Bonds, who argued that the XRP ledger operates as a centralized network under direct corporate control. Schwartz described the accusations as objectively absurd and characterized them as technically incorrect and misleading. The exchange began when Bonds urged users to reject a series of blockchains he considers centralized, including XRP Ledger. He also included Stellar, Canton, Algorand, and Hedera Hashgraph on that list. His main argument targeted the XRPL's unique node list mechanism, which he described as a system granting the company absolute power and control of the network consensus, claiming that validators require permission to participate and that deviating from the recommended list could trigger forks. Now, lots of tech verbiage being thrown around. Also, a lot of other cryptocurrencies managed to work their way into the crossfire on this one. Stellar got thrown into the crossfire. Canton, Algorand, and Hedera Hashgraph all got thrown into the crossfire. And all were very much accused of being centralized blockchains run by a singular corporate entity. And the major concern here with this is that that means that the blockchain is fallible. Because if somebody shows up to Ripple Labs, somebody shows up to Brad Garlinghouse and, puts his feet to the fire, ultimately, he still can control the entire blockchain. They can. It is absolutely possible. And so it's concerning. We've talked about this one a few times. When it comes down to it, the consensus mechanism that XRP Ledger runs off of, it is centralized. And that can be essentially proven by doing nothing more than just looking at XRP validator nodes. And that's what he's talking about here. In regards to the specific validator nodes and this ability that essentially allows for Ripple Labs to choose who is allowed to run or operate a validation node. That is true. The UNL mechanism absolutely does grant Ripple the power to choose who is allowed to be a validator. It does not give Ripple absolute power, but that in and of itself is a very nuanced argument. A very, very nuanced argument. Ultimately, Ripple Labs does have absolute power. They absolutely can shut down the blockchain. It absolutely is centralized. That's why it works. Ripple Labs and XRP's ledger is so efficient and cheap because it's centralized. And so this debate is not going to go away. It's not going to stop. And it's something that you can also very easily go through and verify. Because look, right here, and this is just me doing a very, very simple immediate search of XRP validator nodes. And so, okay. A supermajority, 80% of a node's unique node list must agree for a transaction set to be confirmed. That's the consensus mechanism. So 80% of the unique nodes must agree that the transaction is valid. Okay, perfectly fine here. Everything's adding up, yada, yada, yada. That makes sense. Jump right on down here. UNL unique node list. Each node maintains its own UNL, a curated list of trusted validators. The XRP Ledger Foundation and other organizations publish recommended UNLs. There are only 35 of them. About half of them are run by Ripple Labs, the company. The other ones are run by like MIT runs an operating node. I think Goldman Sachs runs an operating node. JP Morgan, I think, runs an operating node. But otherwise, does that not fit the definition? I mean, okay, you are only allowed to be a unique node if the XRP Ledger Foundation, aka the company, says that you are allowed to be one. They then publish essentially and recommend you, which is an even further way of validating you as being the only safe source for this service. It walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck. It's probably a duck. Operators include, and so it went here. Operates include exchanges like Kraken, BitGet, universities like MIT, and blockchain companies like Coil, including some independent developers. Now, this has changed. Ripple, formerly Ripple Labs, now operates only 2 of the 35 validators in the XRP Ledger Foundation's UNL, a significant reduction from earlier years where it controlled over 50% of UNL validators. Now, this absolutely demonstrates that the network is becoming more and more decentralized, but you can never get away from the fact that you are not allowed to be a node, you are not allowed to be a validator unless you are approved by the company. That is centralized authority and centralized control. And so, this one's not going to go away. You're going to hear about it longer. All of us XRP holders, this is one of those debates that's not going to give us a break. Ultimately, until things change or decentralization continues, it is going to remain a problem. It's going to remain a problem. Because right here, while anyone can run a validator, only those trusted by the network, aka included in a UNL, which is a list that is only put out by Ripple Labs, are allowed to actively influence consensus. Validators not on a UNL still contribute by setting performance benchmarks and improving network health, but you are not validating, nor do you have any control over transactions. And until that changes, it is a centralized blockchain. And that David Schwartz's argument, I understand where he's coming from, and I understand that it's his baby, but he is wrong. That is the literal definition of a centralized blockchain and centralized control and authority. And so I think that it's an important one. Guys, I hold my XRP. I've held my XRP the entire time knowing that it is a centralized blockchain. It has never changed my belief on whether it's a good idea to hold it, but it absolutely is something I wish was not true. I wish that XRP was genuinely decentralized. I wish it was. And I hope that someday it will be. That is where they're going. Look at these numbers. That is where they're going. They are trying to become decentralized. It was not long ago that 50% of all validators were just the company. Just the company doing it. And that was not long ago. And it has dropped from 50% to 2 out of 35. Now, those 2 out of 35 do validate more transactions than any other node on the entire thing combined. And so it's still more centralized than even that 2 out of 35 number kind of represents. But they are on the right path. They are going in the right direction. But I think that honesty and a truthful look at things is far better than an ostrich mentality. Ultimately, XRP is a centralized blockchain. It is run by a corporation. If a government decided to go and show up at Brad Garlinghouse's house tomorrow and the rest of the XRP Ledger operators, it would work. And that's just a fact that we can't ignore. No matter how much we might want to. What we need to really hold on to is the fact that it's changing. They are moving to full decentralization. They do understand the need. And so I feel like we're going to hear about this one for a while. I know already. I got some messages from folks in the community that were very much, and when I say the community, I mean really more the XRP community, that were in freak out mode over this. And we're feeling very, very, very accosted, attacked, essentially on it. And I think that it's important to take a level-headed approach to it. Ultimately, yes, it is centralized, and it's not what we want, but it is moving away. And this is not something that we have to, like, fingers crossed that the company is going to decide to do this. We have proof the company is decentralizing. That is a good thing, and that's where we want to go. And so who all had heard about this one? Who all was seeing things pop up on their news feed, especially the XRP holders out there that are looking all around? Who was seeing stuff about this? What were your thoughts? What were you seeing? I know I've seen some pretty crazy ones. X right now is in an absolute uproar. Crypto X is fighting this one out tooth and nail because it brought in a lot of other groups. So like the Algorand, all the Algorand holders are out there, with pitchforks. The Hedera holders are out there with pitchforks. The Stellar holders are out there with pitchforks. The Canton holders are out there with pitchforks. And the XRP holders are out there with pitchforks ready to come after this guy. Because unfortunately, he made everybody look in the mirror. And the mirror's not lying. All right, let's see what questions I have missed as I was talking on that one. The chatter is Musical Lay. The chatter is trying to spin that XRP isn't going to be profitable and Bitcoin will be the clear winner of profits. Then, man, Musical Lay, that one I definitely don't buy. I definitely don't buy that one. I don't think that we're necessarily talking, like somebody's going to be some kind of massive loser in that conversation. I don't think, honestly, that the folks out there who have invested in other cryptos that are not XRP, I believe that if they've gone with a solid fundamental outlook on use case, users, profitability, looked at it from a corporate standpoint, I strongly believe that people are going to succeed in this endeavor that don't own XRP. But that's a relative argument at that point in time. And Musical Lady, folks just love to do that. People are so tribal about it. It's Bitcoin or nothing, or it's XRP or nothing. And that's just not how the world has ever worked. That's not how any industry works. And it's a terrifying possibility that it would work. Like, imagine they're right. That's the scariest thought. The scariest thought is that the Bitcoin maxis and the XRP maxis, the people who believe that there will be no other crypto besides theirs, that is a dystopian nightmare. I do not ever want to wake up to a world where the only currency is Bitcoin or the only currency is XRP. That's horrifying. And so I just think there's a lot more nuance, but absolutely, Musical Lady, folks are just so tribal about it. And it's not a logical thing to be tribal about. I don't know. It just doesn't make sense. Kathy, isn't Epstein attached to Bitcoin? Epstein was an early investor in a variety of different Bitcoin companies. Kathy, he was not in any way attached to the development of Bitcoin. That's been another piece of misinformation that has been going around that I find to be very frustrating because there are larger concerns in the crypto space that we have learned from the Epstein files. Brock Pierce. Brock Pierce is in those Epstein files. He is still walking around free, and he has a controlling degree of power over Tether. Tether being the largest stablecoin on the planet, holding hundreds of billions of dollars of U.S. Treasury bonds. If I'm worried about things, I'm worried about stuff like that. That is terrifying. And the fact that the crypto space is not freaking out about it, I find to be upsetting. Ultimately, those are things that are very, very worrying and very, very real. Brock Pierce is still wandering around free right now, and he still has controlling abilities in Tether. And he sent a lot of pictures to Mr. Epstein, and I do not believe that those pictures were photos of his crypto portfolio and how well his charts were doing. Matter of fact, I'm really, really certain because I've never sent anybody an email showing somebody a picture of something crypto related and then titled it Anastasia from Ukraine. And so there are very big worries, Kathy, when it comes down to what we've learned from the Epstein files in terms of crypto. Tether in particular, there's a huge worry there, and there should be a huge worry there. There's also a big worry, Kathy, and with what Epstein was doing and what we did learn from the files is that somewhere starting around 2012 to 2014, Epstein was directing funds into certain crypto companies. Coinbase received a fairly large investment from Jeffrey Epstein and some of his buddies. Coinbase, a variety of other ones received fairly substantial investments from Epstein and the Epstein collaborators back in 2012 to 2014. And that is very concerning, and that should be major headlines. And companies like Coinbase should be out there answering questions. Tether in particular should be sitting in front of a Senate committee. Tether absolutely should be sitting in front, should be being brought in for questioning solely on account of the Epstein files. And so, yes, there's stuff to worry about there, Kathy. Some of the things, though, that were said about Epstein and directly influencing the build of Bitcoin, those are not true with what we know right now. I mean, and I need to make certain to say that. More information could come out, Kathy. More files could release, and we could find out that Epstein is Satoshi Nakamoto. I would not in any way doubt it with how crazy this world has gotten. But as of right now, what we can verifiably prove is that Epstein did invest in certain companies between 2012 and 2014 in the cryptocurrency space. He directed other people to invest in them, but he was not in any way around for the development and creation of Bitcoin. That occurred back in 2008, 2009. And so, yeah. Who knows what we're going to learn on that front, though? Who knows? Campfire said, thank you so much for explaining XRP so succinctly. My pleasure. My pleasure. And please, guys out there, do not think that I am poo-pooing upon XRP on account of this. It is a matter, it's a technological handicap that is created by the technology. There's nothing wrong with how it works. And there's nothing wrong with where they're planning on going. They're on the right path. I just don't think that the tribalism that kind of comes around is necessary. I prefer to look at these as you would a company. And ultimately, if you were to go out there and say, I invest every single dollar that I've ever made in Apple, and that's just it. I buy Apple. That's it. Nothing else. And I won't listen to anyone tell me about anything else. It's Apple or nothing. It's either Apple or I just don't invest. You would look at that person and you would say, that's a pretty crazy strategy. And what happens if one thing goes wrong with Apple? It would not fly in any other industry. You would never look at someone and say, oh, this guy obviously understands how the world's economy works. He invested everything in Beanie Babies and made a killing. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. That just, I guess, is the easiest way of going about it, or the easiest way of saying it. And also, no blind faith. I don't have blind faith in any of these companies. I don't have blind faith in Bitcoin or any of them. I have faith in the code and what's provable. And when I am presented with information that changes any of those things, then I'm going to change with whatever is the science of the day on that one. Crazy Chester, silver sitting at 91. It is indeed. It is indeed. Silver back heading up again. Copper also. It's that one's very interesting. I forget. Somebody in the community brought up the copper debate during one of the shows a few months ago, and I know that it drives Andy nuts when he gets asked about copper and about some of the other precious metals, but I still sit in the category of I think that there's a lot more there. I think there's a lot more there. All right. Let's see. What else do we got? Well, actually, we pretty much got one final story for the day, and it's more of just a little bit of another learning opportunity. When it comes down to it, this is a great learning opportunity that CNBC decided that I'm not allowed to provide for you anymore. This is driving me nuts when it comes to all the paywalls and account walls on all of the different supposed news outlets. And so I'm not going to give them the satisfaction. We're not logging in and making one. I can tell you exactly what's going on here. Bitcoin mining is no longer profitable after crypto's latest downturn, analysts say. What does this mean? Bitcoin mining is no longer profitable. This is a very, very interesting nuance. And I think y'all are going to go off with a very fun fact on account of this one for the rest of the day. You can blow some people's minds with this one because I don't think people are aware at all of how this works. And so, what do they mean? Bitcoin mining is no longer profitable. All right. This is a very real thing, also, guys. A very, very real thing. And it's occurred many times throughout the past. So this is not in any way unique. But what they're saying is that it's no longer profitable to mine a Bitcoin. And so at a price of $68,547 per Bitcoin, what they're saying, and it's true, it costs more in energy than $68,542. They're saying essentially, and that's what the Bitcoin mining industry is saying, and it is very real. And they're saying that it is no longer profitable to mine Bitcoin. This makes a lot of people freak out because folks think that this means that all the Bitcoin miners are going to stop mining. And if they stop mining, then the Bitcoin blockchain just falls to pieces. Doesn't work because there's no one validating because it's no longer profitable to validate. That's not true. How the Bitcoin blockchain works, and this is and I think y'all are going to love this. Okay. How it works is it changes how difficult it is to get or mine a Bitcoin based on how many people or how much power is being used to try and mine Bitcoins. And so, if everybody out there and their mother is running a Bitcoin mining node, it is going to make it harder to mine a Bitcoin. If less people are trying to mine a Bitcoin, the algorithm automatically adapts and it changes the complexity of the questions necessary to validate the network. And so, when you see a headline like this, that, hey, it's no longer profitable to mine Bitcoin, what is going to happen? A bunch of miners are going to stop mining. They're going to stop mining because it's no longer profitable to mine. So they're going to stop. When they stop, it's going to become easier to mine a Bitcoin. And that means that it will always be incentivized for miners to continue operating. Essentially, the less miners there are, the more profitable it is to mine. And so it's a self-correcting system. The market will correct itself because where does money go? Money goes where it is appreciated. And when I say appreciated, I mean appreciation in value. Money always goes where it is appreciated. And so whenever miners stop mining, the other miners start making more money. And what does that mean? It's a boom bust cycle that will never stop because a bunch of miners stop mining, the miners start making more money, new people come in to mine because it's a profitable enterprise, and then suddenly there's too many miners, a bunch of miners stop mining, and the cycle rinses and repeats over and over and over again. It has always done that. It will do that again. And so when you see a headline like this, from now on, remember that you know why. You understand what is going on here and the why and the how. Ultimately, the blockchain is adapting to the amount of miners. And so when you see headlines like this, they sound terrifying. It's like, what does that mean? Like, well, what does that even mean? Or is Bitcoin going to fail? Or there's not going to be miners? It throws a very, very false image into people's minds when they see this. It sounds like there's some kind of inherent failure in the technology. And it's not true. The technology actually solved this problem like at the beginning. It was like, we can immediately fix this. This is super easy. And so, should this continue to occur, it is only means that the more and more miners that drop off, the more profitable it will be to mine a Bitcoin. And in the next year or so, guess what you're going to see? A bunch of random people running Bitcoin miners in their house again because suddenly it's profitable again. Sounds like Crazy Chest. Sounds like the Express Lane changed their prices on an ongoing process. Essentially, it is constantly adapting, but it's adapting in a unbiased fashion. It does not care where the validators are. It doesn't care that you're validating in Kazakhstan. It doesn't care. It cares about how much hash rate you're pushing. How much computing power are you providing to the Bitcoin network? The more computing power you provide, the more expensive said computing power is to not only own, but to operate. That continues to rise your cost of mining a Bitcoin. And so these two numbers, the cost, how much power is necessary to mine a Bitcoin, and the price of Bitcoin have a very unexpected correlation. That at least a very unexpected one for most that don't, that aren't aware of that's how it works. And so it's self-corrected. It is far, far smarter than any general human-based system, because it's not a human-based system. It is an algorithm. It is a robot. It doesn't care why. It doesn't have any emotion about what it's doing. It is adapting to its environment. And that's how it operates. And so I think that one might be a fun fact for a lot of folks. That is something that when I have talked to folks, I don't know, maybe 99.999% people in the crypto industry don't know that's how Bitcoin works. but it is absolutely 1000% how it operates. You can go through and you can also look back throughout all of crypto's history, and you can actually look at how much hash power was necessary to mine a Bitcoin. And so take it entirely out of units of dollars, of anything, and just place it entirely in a metric of literal joules. And that is Joules, as in the unit of energy, joules. It can actually be placed into that. And that number constantly fluctuates along with competition. It's hyper intelligent. I mean, to a degree of intelligence that's, brilliance. That is on a whole other level. And so, well, guys, at an hour and 15 minutes today, I thought it was going to be a fairly short stream. But there's just so much going on in the world, and some really, really interesting topics today. So I had a great time chatting on it. I hope folks learned some. I'm looking forward to more and more questions come Friday on all of this. And also, fingers crossed, I should be ready for our ledger walkthrough on Friday. The reason we're not having our ledger walkthrough today is because all of this other stuff happened. Lots to talk about. Very interesting. But also, apparently, when I rebuilt my PC a month or so ago, I decided that I just did not need to power my front USB ports on my PC tower. And so I don't have a long enough cable to be able to show you guys everything on the ledger, but I'll have that figured out and ready by Friday. And so Friday, we're going to be going through and doing our ledger hardware wallet tutorial and a brand new updated version. Because the last time I went through and walked everyone in the community through setting up a ledger hardware wallet, it was a long time ago now when it comes down to the world of technology and how much things have changed. So my apologies for those that were looking forward to that one today. Don't worry, it's still happening. It's happening on Friday. We'll be doing the ledger setup, unless something like the Clarity Act passes or something of that nature. If something that big occurs in the crypto space, that's probably just going to completely dominate the news cycle. But otherwise, hopefully we get both. Hopefully we get a ledger hardware wallet tutorial on Friday, and we get the passage of the Clarity Act, and then we can have one heck of a crypto celebratory weekend. But all right, guys, love you all. Thank you so much. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Crazy Chester. Thank you, Musical Lady. Thank you, Kathy. And thank you so much, Trish and Kukla. I'm looking forward to Friday. So 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will either be hopefully celebrating some kind of massive win in the crypto space, or we'll be learning about important things for when we do have that big crypto win. It's going to be important that we've got our hardware wallets all set up and ready, and that we're safe and secure and able to use them. That way, when we do have our big winning days, we're ready to take advantage of it. So, all right. Peace, guys. See you soon.